Level 1, the open house visitor. You park a used sedan between two Range Rovers on a Saturday morning. The house is listed at $4 million. You are not buying anything today. You know that. The agent standing at the door doesn't, and for the next 90 minutes, you are going to pretend otherwise. You walk through the front door and the smell hits you first. Fresh flowers, lemon, warm wood. The ceilings are 14 feet high. The kitchen island is the size of your entire apartment. You run your hand along the countertop and it is cool and smooth and costs more per square foot than your monthly rent. You are 24 years old. You work in commercial insurance. You earn $53,000 before taxes. You have $900 in a savings account and a student loan balance you don't like to calculate before noon. You don't know what you're walking through yet. Not really. You think this is a house. It is not. It is a statement. It is a negotiation. It is a performance that began decades before you arrived and will continue long after you leave. The listing agent walks you through the primary suite. She tells you about the radiant floor heating, the steam shower with 6 body sprays. She mentions, with practiced casualness, that the seller is motivated. You nod. You don't know what motivated means in this context. You will learn. You leave without giving her your real phone number. You sit in your car in the driveway for a moment. You look at the house in the rearview mirror as you pull away. Something has shifted in your chest. Not ambition exactly. More like orientation. A compass needle that just found north. On the drive home, you decide to spend the next 5 years learning everything there is to know about this market. You have no idea what that will actually require. But the direction is set, and direction is where everything starts. Level 2, the newly licensed agent. You pass the state exam on your second attempt. The first time, the math section defeats you. The second time, you are ready for it. You pay $300 for your license. You join a mid-size brokerage in the suburbs because they offer a training program and a desk. The training program lasts 2 weeks. It covers contract law, disclosure requirements, fair housing regulations, the mechanics of a transaction. It does not cover what the job actually is. Nobody tells you the job is 90% rejection and 10% paperwork, with occasional moments of genuine human consequence. You make no money for 4 months. You work from 7 in the morning until 9 at night. You cold call expired listings. You knock on doors in neighborhoods where people don't want to be bothered. You sit at open houses for other agents and talk to people who are walking through on a Saturday with no intention of making an offer. Your first client is a couple buying a $250,000 townhouse in a neighborhood that used to be industrial. They are careful, patient people who ask reasonable questions and make a reasonable offer, and the transaction closes without incident. Your commission, after the broker split, is $3,700. It takes 4 months to arrive. You tell people you're in real estate at dinner parties. Some of them nod politely. Some immediately ask if you know anything in their area. A few ask whether the market is about to crash. You don't know. Nobody knows. You learn to say the market is always local, which is true and also buys you time. You start attending every luxury open house you can find. Not as a buyer. As a student. You watch how the listing agents carry themselves, how they talk about materials and light and land. You take notes on your phone in the car afterward. You start building a vocabulary you don't quite own yet, but you are memorizing the grammar of it, one property at a time. Level 3, the buyer's agent. 2 years in, you land a referral that changes your trajectory. A colleague passes you a client, a software engineer relocating from Seattle, budget of $1.2 million, needs to close in 60 days. You have never represented a buyer at that price point. You say yes without hesitating. You spend the next 2 weeks studying every listing in the target zip code. You tour 12 properties before the client arrives. You know the inventory better than agents who have worked that market for a decade. When you sit down with your client at a coffee shop for the first intake meeting, you don't stumble once. You find him a house in 41 days. The negotiation is complicated. The seller's agent is experienced and reads the situation quickly, understanding your client wants the property more than he is showing. You hold the line on price, concede on timeline, and get the deal done. Your client shakes your hand at the closing table. He refers you to 3 colleagues within a year. It takes a while to understand that luxury real estate at the entry level is not really about the property. The property is just the occasion for everything else. It is about trust, which has to be constructed from scratch with every client, every transaction. It is about being the person who knows more than the room, and being able to show that without making the room feel small. You make $110,000 that year. More money than you have ever earned. You spend too much of it immediately on a car that is slightly beyond your means. Your mentor, a 20-year veteran who runs a boutique firm downtown, tells you to buy assets, not accessories. You hear her. You don't fully listen. You will in 2 years, after the car depreciates and a slow quarter reminds you what variable income actually means. Level 4, the listing agent. You're on both sides of the table now. You represent sellers. You photograph properties, price them, market them, and manage the inevitable emotion that surfaces when a family has to decide what their home is worth to strangers. Your listings range from $900,000 to $2.5 million. These are serious houses on streets with mature trees and good school districts. The sellers are successful people, often at transition points: divorces, retirements, career moves, deaths in the family. You handle all of it with the same professional surface while cataloging the human complexity underneath. Sellers almost always believe their property is worth more than the market will pay. The data tells you what comparable properties sold for. The seller tells you about the addition they built in 2019, the custom tile work, the years they spent in this kitchen. Both things are true, and only one of them determines the listing price. You learn to have that conversation without flinching. You sit across from people in rooms they are about to leave forever and tell them what their history is worth in dollars. You do it clearly and with evidence, and you do it kindly. But you do it. Agents who can't do it clearly don't last in this market. You list a house at $1.9 million that was originally purchased for $400,000 in 2001. The sellers are a couple in their early 60s, both retired, moving to be near their grandchildren. The wife cries twice during the walkthrough. The husband doesn't, but he goes quiet when they reach the garage where he kept his woodworking equipment. The house sells in 9 days at $2.1 million. You hand them a check and they look at it, and something passes between them that you are not a part of. You close the file, drive home, and spend the evening on administrative work, because there are always 3 other files open and one of them has a deadline. Level 5, the top producer. You are 33 years old. Your volume last year was $48 million. Your name is on the signs that get stuck in the ground outside significant properties, and people in your market recognize it without necessarily knowing why. That took 8 years to build. Your phone rings before 7 in the morning. It rings after 10 at night. You have set boundaries around it twice and dismantled those boundaries twice, because this business does not respect schedules. The client in the middle of a bidding war does not wait until 9. The seller whose deal is falling apart on a Thursday evening needs you right now. You have 2 full-time assistants, a showing coordinator, and a transaction manager. You run the operation like a small business, because that is exactly what it is. You track your pipeline, your conversion rates, your average days on market. You study your numbers the way a surgeon studies imaging, because the numbers tell you where the weaknesses are before the weaknesses show up in your income. Your clients at this level are different from the ones you started with. Many of them are accustomed to a particular kind of service. They expect a response in minutes, not hours. They expect you to know the market before they ask. They expect the process handled so smoothly that it appears effortless. It is not effortless. The effort is just invisible by design. You lose a listing to a competitor once. You believed it was yours. The seller chose differently. You sit with that for a weekend and then you move forward. You study what the other agent did, how they presented, what their marketing materials looked like, how they positioned the property. You don't copy them. You learn from them. There is a difference that matters. You take on a listing at $5.5 million that has been sitting with another agent for 4 months. A spectacular house with a positioning problem. The previous agent marketed it to buyers who couldn't afford it and underpriced it to buyers who wouldn't consider it. You re-photograph it, rewrite the listing description, and reset the price at 5.8. It sells in 3 weeks at 5.75. The seller is furious at the previous agent and grateful to you. You tell him gratitude in this business has a short shelf life. He laughs. You are not entirely joking. Level 6, the ultra-luxury specialist. There is a threshold in residential real estate that most agents never cross. Nobody announces when you've passed it, but your first $10 million listing is unmistakable. The house is different. The clients are different. The silence around the transaction is different. You are brought in by a referral from an attorney managing the estate of a technology executive relocating internationally. The property is $13 million, set on 2 acres behind a gate, with a view corridor that took decades of landscaping to engineer. 4 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a guest house, a pool designed by the same firm that built one in Monaco. The buyer pool at this price is not large. It is measured in dozens, not hundreds. You market differently here. No yard signs, no Sunday afternoon open houses. Private showings arranged through a network of agents who represent qualified buyers, by appointment only, with verified financial capacity confirmed before anyone walks through the door. You meet people at this level who have a different relationship with money than anyone you've encountered before. The decision-making process changes when the number involved is a fraction of net worth rather than the entirety of it. The negotiation cadence changes. Due diligence is handled by teams of attorneys, financial advisors, and personal assistants. You are one node in a complex network. You also meet people at this level who are genuinely unhappy in ways the house cannot fix, and who know it and are buying anyway. A marriage that needs a statement. A career achievement that requires a physical monument. A fear of obsolescence being hedged against in marble and square footage. You are not a therapist. You keep the observation to yourself and close the transaction. The property sells at $12.4 million after 6 weeks. Your commission is substantial enough that you sit with the wire confirmation for a long moment before you stand up from your desk, because there are always more files open. Level 7, the private network player. Properties at the top of the market often don't appear on any public listing service. This takes a long time to understand and longer to access. The most significant residential transactions in any major market happen quietly, referred between a small number of agents who have each other's personal numbers and have demonstrated, over years, that they can be trusted at that level. You are 40 years old. Your volume last year was 91 million. You are invited to a small gathering at a colleague's office downtown. 12 agents, all specialists, all operating at the same altitude. The conversation is about off-market inventory, about a buyer in the country for 60 days looking for something between 18 and 25 million, about a seller who hasn't decided to sell yet but might, under the right circumstances, if the right number were presented privately before anything went public. This is the actual market at the top. The on-market listings are the ones that didn't find a buyer through private conversation first. The visible inventory is what remained after those conversations concluded. You represent a couple from Europe looking for a compound property in a specific coastal corridor. They have a defined budget and a short list of requirements: water frontage, privacy, no shared walls with adjacent properties, guest accommodations independent from the main structure. The standard market has nothing that qualifies. You spend 3 months working through private contacts before you find a property whose owners haven't decided to sell but would consider a strong off-market approach. The conversation between attorneys takes 2 weeks. The price is never formally negotiated in the traditional sense. A number is proposed, evaluated, countered once, and accepted. 22.5 million. No public record of the listing. No days on market because it was never on the market. The transaction closes and neither party appears anywhere in print. Your clients fly home. A handwritten note arrives 2 weeks later. You frame it and put it in your office, not because of the business it represents, but because handwritten notes at this level are rare enough to mean something. Level 8, the development advisor. You start working with developers. Not as a selling agent at the end of the process, but earlier at the beginning, when the project is still on paper and the questions are basic ones. Where should this building sit on the site? What should the unit sizes be? Which finishes will the target buyer actually pay a premium for, versus the ones they'll say they want but won't price into their offer? You are brought into a high-rise residential development on the waterfront. 42 units, priced from 3.5 million to 18 million for the penthouse. The developer has the construction experience, the capital, and the site. What he needs is someone who has sat across from the actual buyer at this price point and listened to them, not a focus group or a survey, but the real person in the room deciding what a specific combination of light, height, and material is worth to them personally. You spend 6 months advising on the pre-sale strategy before ground is broken. You review the floor plans and flag 3 layouts that will be difficult to sell regardless of price because the proportions create a functional problem. The developer pushes back. You show him the comps on similar configurations that sat on the market. He adjusts 2 of the 3. The third, he is too far into construction documents to change. That unit sells last and at the steepest discount. You don't say anything to him about it. He already knows. Pre-sales begin 14 months before the building opens. You sell 29 units before the foundation is poured, to buyers purchasing an architectural rendering, a material sample board, and a sales team's credibility. That is a different kind of trust than anything you handled in residential resale. The buyer cannot walk through the kitchen. They cannot feel the light in the primary suite at 4 in the afternoon in October. They are buying your judgment alongside the developer's ability to deliver, which means that if the developer fails them, you have failed them too. The building opens. The buyers walk through their completed units. Two of them call you with concerns. One is legitimate and the developer addresses it. The other is a preference that was never part of the agreement. You manage both conversations and both clients stay in the building. At this stage in your career, your reputation walks into every room ahead of you. You treat every call as though the next referral depends on how you handle it, because it does. Level 9, the Market Authority. You are 51 years old. You have sold over $1 billion in residential real estate across a 25-year career, closed transactions in 8 states, and been cited as a data source in the research reports of 2 major banks on high-net-worth residential market conditions. You are quoted in publications you used to read as a student. People assume this level feels like arrival. It mostly feels like Tuesday. The next call, the next negotiation, the next decision about whether a property is priced correctly and which buyers are actually qualified versus which ones perform qualification without having the capacity. You speak at an industry conference and 300 agents write down things you say. You try to tell them the truest things you know, which are not especially complicated, serve the client past the point where it's comfortable, know the market better than anyone in the room, return every call, protect your reputation as if your income depends on it, because it does and always has. The younger agents approach you afterward with specific questions about specific situations. You answer them honestly. You tell one of them that the deal she's describing has a counterparty who is playing her, and she should trust that instinct she mentioned and verify the financials independently. You tell another that the seller he's working with is not actually ready to sell and he should have that conversation directly instead of letting the transaction collapse on its own. You remember being in those situations. You were bad at handling them for longer than you'd like to admit. You manage a team of 11. You spend more time now coaching than transacting. You read files, ask questions, and let the younger agents run transactions while staying available when a situation requires escalation. 2 of them will eventually build careers larger than yours. You know which 2. You are helping them do it, partly because it is the right thing to do and partly because the market's reputation is made of the quality of the people operating in it, and you have a stake in that quality independent of any single transaction. Level 10, the Exit and the Reckoning. You step back. Not fully, not immediately, but you restructure. Fewer listings. Selective work. You stop attending every event and every pitch meeting. Your team handles the volume. You consult on the transactions that require judgment built over decades. You sit in your home office on a Tuesday morning in the quiet that follows 30 years of noise. Your desk looks out over a garden, now 6 years old and starting to look the way you intended when you planted it. The perennials are establishing. The stone path is weathered correctly. Things that take time to become themselves eventually do. You did well by this market. Not perfectly. You made pricing errors that cost clients money, and negotiating decisions under pressure that you would handle differently now. You lost transactions you should have won and pushed too hard for ones you probably shouldn't have. There is a version of the ledger that reads favorably. There is another version that is less comfortable, and that one is also accurate. You think about specific properties. Not the numbers, not the commissions, but the actual rooms and the actual people. The couple in their 60s watching a closing statement turn $400,000 of 2001 money into a generational event. The software engineer from Seattle, walking through the door of a house that was going to become his children's childhood. The European couple whose privacy you protected through a process so careful the transaction never appeared in a single publication. You also think about the ones you didn't get right. The seller you pressured into a price reduction 2 weeks before the market shifted in her favor, because you were reading urgency into a situation that required patience. The buyer who trusted your read on a neighborhood's trajectory and bought into a block that did not develop the way you projected. You told him the truth about your analysis, but you were more confident than the evidence warranted. He stayed in the property, broke even eventually, never called you again. That is the permanent record. Every career at this level has one. You are asked to speak at a licensing ceremony for a new class of agents. You stand in front of 60 people who just passed their exams and look like they are about to compete rather than serve. They haven't learned yet that the 2 orientations produce completely different outcomes over time. You tell them the market will test them in ways the exam never did. You tell them the client in front of them is making one of the largest financial decisions of their life, and they will have to earn the right to guide the decision through demonstrated competence, not through confidence borrowed from a licensing exam. You tell them to study the market so thoroughly that they can feel when something is wrong before the data confirms it. You tell them to remember every mistake and treat every error as information rather than failure. They listen. Some of them are nodding. A few are already distracted by their phones. Somewhere across the city right now, a 24-year-old is parking a used sedan between 2 larger vehicles on a Saturday morning. They are about to walk through a $4 million house they cannot afford. The listing agent will never see them again. But that walkthrough will do something to them. It will calibrate something that was previously uncalibrated. They will sit in their car afterward and feel the needle shift. They don't know what they're getting into yet. They won't for years. But they are already in it, whether they understand that or not, and the market does not pause for comprehension. It is already testing them, and the test does not announce itself, and the scoring will not be revealed for a very long time. That is how this works. That is always how this works.